What if the genius who could save thousands of lives was a homeless man sleeping under a bridge? What if the fate of a billion-dollar company and the safety of the skies rested in the hands of someone the world had thrown away? This is the unbelievable story of a broken man who walked into a boardroom full of millionaires and changed everything. Inside the glass-walled boardroom of Coleman Aerospace in Chicago, chaos reigned. On the whiteboard sat the design of a plane, covered in lines, numbers, and failed solutions. At the head of the table, Richard Coleman, the billionaire CEO, slammed his fist against the desk. His voice cracked. "We have 48 hours. If we fail again, we lose the contracts. We lose everything." The room of engineers froze. Not a sound. Despair hung in the air like a storm cloud. Then, an unexpected voice from the doorway. "I can fix it." Heads turned. There stood a ragged man in his early 40s, wearing a torn coat, shoes covered in dust, clutching a battered brown bag. Security moved in instantly, but Richard raised a hand. "Wait." The stranger's eyes locked on the drawing like it was a long-lost friend. "I can fix it," he repeated, his voice calm. Hours earlier, under a bridge on the edge of the city, William Adams woke up on a piece of cardboard. His only possessions were in that brown bag: an old aeronautical engineering textbook, a bundle of certificates, and a half-empty pen. Once, William had been a top engineer in the U.S., but betrayal, a ruined marriage, false charges, and deportation had destroyed him. Now he was invisible, a ghost in the city. But not today. Today, something inside him pushed him to walk into Coleman Aerospace. And when he saw the whiteboard of wrong answers, he knew he couldn't stay silent. Back in the boardroom, Richard studied him. "You think you can solve what my best engineers couldn't?" William nodded. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then Richard slid the marker across the table. "If you waste our time," he warned, "you waste my company. Don't waste it." The ragged man stepped forward. He erased 2 wrong arrows and drew 1 clean line. He circled a sensor on the wing and explained, in simple words, the flaw no one had seen. "When this sensor shakes, it panics. The autopilot forces the plane down. The pilots fight back. It becomes a tug-of-war and then a fall. Filters, cross-checks, and something he called soft hands, letting the system respond gently instead of fighting the pilots." The engineers leaned in. Skepticism turned into awe. "Run a simulation," Richard ordered. The digital plane took off on the screen. Numbers flashed. Warnings blinked. For weeks, this was the moment the system collapsed. William whispered under his breath, "Soft hands." And the system held. The plane leveled. Disaster turned into calm. The room erupted. Engineers leapt to their feet, clapping, cheering. Richard Coleman grabbed William by the shoulders, tears in his eyes. "You just saved my company and maybe countless lives." In Richard's office, William finally told a story. He had once designed aircraft systems in America with a family he loved, but suspicion destroyed his home. After accusing his wife of infidelity, he was framed for crimes he didn't commit. 2 years in prison, deportation, homelessness. "But this bag," William said softly, patting his old book, "was the only reminder of who I used to be." Richard's throat tightened. He stood. "No more bridges. You're coming back. With me." The next day, William walked into Coleman Aerospace in a clean suit, freshly shaved, his head held high. Richard introduced him as the new lead engineer. The room erupted in applause. But not everyone was clapping. At the back of the room, Mark Stevens, the former lead engineer, glared with burning hatred. In hours, his throne had been taken by a man from the streets. He forced a smile, but inside, he vowed revenge. Weeks passed. William proved himself again and again, solving problems no one else could. The company's reputation soared. Reporters hailed him as the homeless genius who saved the skies. And in the middle of it all, William found love. He met Rachel Miller, a kind accountant at the company. She saw through his scars and broken past. Their friendship grew into late-night talks, quiet dinners, and finally love. One night, under the city lights, William knelt with a ring. "Rachel, will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. Yes. It was the life he thought he had lost forever. But Mark Stevens was not done. The night before the wedding, William sat in his mansion, Richard's gift, flipping through his old textbook. He thought of how far he'd come. Then a knock. 3 men in dark jackets stood at the door. The shot rang out before he could speak. The bullet tore into his arm. He collapsed, blood soaking his sleeve. The attackers fled. Sirens wailed. Rachel cried over him in the ambulance, whispering desperate prayers. For 3 days, William hovered between life and death. Finally, his eyes opened. Rachel wept with relief. Richard gripped his hand. "You scared us all. But you're not leaving us yet." The truth came quickly. CCTV footage revealed Mark meeting with hired gunmen. Police arrested him. In court, witnesses testified. The evidence was undeniable. The judge's voice was firm. "Mark Stevens, this court finds you guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy. You are hereby sentenced to 20 years in prison." Mark's face twisted with rage as he was led away. "This isn't over," he spat. "I'll come back for you. I'll destroy everything you've built." William looked him in the eye and replied calmly, "You've already destroyed yourself." Months later, William and Rachel finally married. The wedding was breathtaking. Reporters, officials, engineers all watching as the man who once lived under a bridge walked down the aisle to a future filled with love. Soon after, they welcomed a baby boy. William held him gently. "You will never know the life I lived under that bridge. You'll only know love." For a while, life was perfect. The company thrived. His family flourished. But in the quiet of the night, Richard brought troubling news. "Mark's been talking in prison. He claims he still has people on the outside. He says even behind bars, he can reach you." William's jaw tightened. He looked at his son asleep in the crib. "Let him try. I've lived through worse. He doesn't understand. Fear no longer rules me." On a calm evening, William stood on his balcony with Rachel and their baby. Stars shimmered above. Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder. "What are you thinking?" William looked at his family, then at the sky. "I'm thinking about the future, and how the greatest enemies aren't always out there. They're inside.
Fear, doubt, pain.
Those are the ones I must conquer. For him, for us." Rachel smiled softly. "And you will, because you always rise." And with his family by his side, William knew one truth. No matter how many shadows returned, he would never fall again.